For those who don't know, I had a pretty big life lesson this week, and there are a few things that I want to say.
All right, Sunday morning. This is like really early to be dealing with this shit. But it's a complex topic, and a lot of people have asked me to address her and address this, and I will. That's Jen. She recently discovered that she was Puerto Rican. She has Puerto Rican blood in her, and she wanted to tell her story. And a lot of Puerto Ricans, including myself, embraced her and received her with open arms and are happy that she's learning from our culture. That's one thing. But then it got a little bit complicated. And mind you, she didn't know that she was Puerto Rican. She didn't know that she had Puerto Rican blood. That part was hidden from her due to an affair of one of her parents. But then one Puerto Rican went in the comments and said, like, ah ha ha, or whatever, you don't have any Taino blood in her, and look at her like claiming shit. And in all honesty, Jen, I suggest that you put your saliva in a tube and find out, because this information is important. Mostly for you, but also for the people who are going after you. Because unfortunately, we as Puerto Ricans are a mixed ethnicity, mostly combined of Spaniard, African, and Taino, Native American, indigenous blood from Puerto Rico. But there's other like lineages too. We're very complex. I heard Puerto Ricans that have like Scandinavian blood, and they can trace their roots back to the Irish. Like, it's very, very complex, and we're all different. But listen, at the end of the day, Jen, you have to understand something. We as Puerto Ricans are a very, very complex, nuanced type of community. The only way you're going to learn this is by being Puerto Rican, by living in the culture, like for a long time. And there's Puerto Ricans that don't understand this, that have lived their entire life in the United States. That's something that the only way you're going to learn it is by living in the island, to be perfectly honest. But just to give you an idea on how complicated things are, there's Puerto Ricans that identify as Taino. They identify completely as indigenous people of Puerto Rico. They speak Arawak. They are trying to preserve that culture and to move it forward. Then there's Puerto Ricans like me. Like, I identify as black. My good friend Dean Huertas identifies as Taino, and I identify as black. I connect with my West African heritage roots. It's my dominating DNA, and I identify as black. There's Puerto Ricans that identify as white, even though they're not. They have other lineages in them that are from people of color, from Africa and whatnot, and Taino blood, but they identify as white. They identify with their colonizers' blood, and they want to belong to Spain. They even want their nationality. They are happy with that, which I think is incredibly stupid. But anyways, you have those three things. You have people that identify as black, people that identify as Taino, and people that identify as Spaniard. And there's people that identify as all three. They'll tell you, I am proud of all my three heritages, or I am proud of these two more than this one. And there's people that don't identify with any of them, that are like, no, I'm fucking Irish, Puerto Rican Irish, or whatever. There's people that in Puerto Rico, like, are adopted, like La China Boricua, which I love. She's, Asian, but she's Puerto Rican. I look at her, I talk to her. To me, she's Puerto Rican, but you can tell she's Asian, right? And sometimes it's more about how you feel than your blood and your DNA and whatnot. We're very complex. But listen, at the end of the day, here's why you came into a little bit of a problem. If a Taino person addresses you, or somebody, like, oh, you're white, and you can't attack them. You can't be like, well, we're not going to do this, because that comes from a place of privilege. You have to understand that Puerto Ricans like yourself, that are white passing, that are American, that their English is perfect, that they have no accent, you are enjoying a huge amount of privilege. And you have to understand that. And Puerto Ricans traditionally don't discriminate against white Puerto Ricans as much as they discriminate against black Puerto Ricans and indigenous Puerto Ricans. There's a lot of discrimination against those two groups because we are not white passing. And a lot of Puerto Ricans have internalized racism, which is also a fucking problem. Now, all that being said, here is my suggestion as a Puerto Rican who was born in the island and lived there for 36 years. You have to approach the culture with respect and with the ability to listen and to want to learn. Don't be performative. Don't be cute about it. I understand where you're coming from. Approach it with like huge respect. Con pinza, like we say in Puerto Rico, like delicately. Because there's always going to be that side of Puerto Ricans who are apprehensive about seeing a white person try to get immersed in their culture. You know, it's very, very difficult. There's always going to be that sense of resentment from some because we are colonized. We are a colonized nation that has gone through a lot of pain inflicted by people who look like you. So you have to understand how complicated that is. Approach it with caution. We are not gatekeepers, and we shouldn't be gatekeepers of our culture. None of us should. In my opinion, we should embrace everybody that wants to belong to us and want to be part of our culture, and we are a big family. But like any big family, we also have our problems, and we fight against each other sometimes. And you have to understand why those fights happen, you know, and where does it come from? And even at times, we as Puerto Ricans cannot agree on each other. There's some Puerto Ricans that think, well, if you're not born in the island, you're not a true Puerto Rican. If you don't know Spanish, you're not a true Puerto Rican. When it's stupid, because Spanish is a colonizer's language just as much as English. You know, that's a conversation to be had as well. Again, we are very, very, very complex, and you're not going to learn everything about us in 2 weeks of reading a couple of books. It's not going to happen. There's Puerto Ricans that have lived in the island their entire lives and are still to this day arguing about all this shit. You know, you're probably never going to grasp it, and you have to be okay with that. But understand that we accept you, but approach it carefully and with respect, and understand that there's people that are being disenfranchised from our own culture, from other people, other Puerto Ricans even that look like you. And that's why probably you got a little bit of backlash. We welcome you, you know. But understand that there's some Puerto Ricans that are going to build resentment because people like you are quickly more accepted than Puerto Ricans that are black or indigenous. And that's also a problem, you know, and a conversation to be had. At any rate, I wish you the best in your journey. I know this is like tough, but hopefully you'll be able to navigate it better. You know, we're here to help. Que tenga buen día.